that's something we see a lot over and over again. There's so much is secretive here. What was that from your perspective?
Yeah, the prosecution was determined to spoon-feed the jury just a particular narrative, and they censored out and manipulated everything else. They were intent that nothing could come out, that there was multiple DPRs. Even their own agents said that. They know that their own evidence says that there were. They had a narrative, and that was that there was one DPR who was a ruthless kingpin who was motivated by power and money and would do anything to protect his empire. And that was the only thing that the jury was going to hear. They erased, they would not allow Ross's libertarian, nonviolent philosophy to be addressed. Christopher Tarbell, who's featured in this film, didn't show up at trial. He was virtually erased so that the defense couldn't question him about the server, couldn't question him about his investigation. It was like he didn't exist. It was a very carefully managed narrative, and it was extremely frustrating to have. There was an hour left of the cross-examination of Driegan, which was bringing out a whole other story that was basically shut down. And I feel like, you know, we all deserve a fair trial, and if we don't have one in this country, we're in big trouble. I feel that the evidence being digital, the government said themselves, digital evidence cannot be authenticated. It is subject to manipulation, editing, planting, faking. A mortgage company will not take your bank statement, a screenshot of your bank statement, because they know how easily it can be faked. And yet now, with this precedent, the government has a lower bar standard of proof than a mortgage company to put someone in a cage for decades. That's very troubling. And that's what most of their evidence was.
Can I just say thank you for becoming an activist on this cause?
Well, I didn't know if I could even speak coming up there. It's very emotional. Then I get mad.
Well, yeah. You know, the overbearing, you know, the prosecution being so overbearing on this reminds me a little of specifically that part where there was a threat that he may kill somebody potentially from prison. It reminds me a lot of that sort of classic Kevin Mitnick story, where they threw him in the 90s. Yeah. The hacker Kevin Mitnick was thrown into solitary. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because they thought that he could start a nuclear war by whistling into a phone.
Yes. Yeah.
And so there's this major disconnect between this kind of overbearing notion of what this, where this stuff is, and the reality of the situation.
Yeah, well, there's a couple. I mean, you know, there's a couple of different poles of issues. Well, there's a lot of issues at play here. I'd say the two significant issues that are specific to this case are issues involving the punitive nature of both cyber and digital space, as Cindy Cohn from the EFF talks about in the movie. Look at the Aaron Swartz case. Look at, you know, Barrett Brown, Jeremy Hammond, people who are sometimes in danger of being given 100-year jail sentences for posting a hyperlink. So there's a huge disparity between your actions online and your actions in the physical space, and that's all due to systemic fear. A certain amount of lack of understanding, though, I think at this day and age they kind of understand. So it's mostly fear of, you know, the power and control being eroded, which is, you know, paranoid. I mean, it's a bit of a Red Scare kind of McCarthy-era type mentality, but here we are. And then on the other side, you have the drug war component, which is, you know, as Neil talks about in the movie, millions and millions and millions and millions of mostly minority, non-violent offenders who are for profit being socked away into the prison system. And what's happening, the internet is allowing, like the proposition that just passed in California, it's allowing these movements to change policy, which is terrifying to a lot of people in power. Ross happens to be caught bang in the middle of both of those issues. And that's why I found the murder for hire charges so troubling, simply because I think most people, even that I talk to, go, oh yeah, that's the guy that just got convicted of trying to murder people on the internet. I'm like, no.
For Bitcoin. There was something that just
using Bitcoin to murder people on the internet, I guess, yeah. Like Odd Job killing people with his hat. For the old people in the audience. I mean, and that's troubling because, you know, I was in the courtroom and he wasn't being charged for murder. You know, if he gets a life sentence or something, whatever he gets in May, which may be quite high, hopefully it won't be, it will be mandatory minimums based mostly on drug laws that are highly punitive, nonviolent offenses, and cyber laws that were broken. That could put him away for the rest of his life.
He's just caught in this, in this terrible sort of, you know, storm.
Yeah, he's right in the middle of a perfect storm.
Yeah, well, we should, I think there's going to be some questions. So if anybody has a question, come up to there's microphones. Questions? Anybody?
Do you think the judge was bought off, and is there any question that she could not be? I mean, how could she not be?
Well, you know, bought off, I don't know. She makes a decent salary. You know, I think that, you know, in all honesty, your deal, you know, you could do some research, and there's a certain amount of this I want to be careful about what I say just because he hasn't been sentenced yet, so I don't really want to be flinging mud in the judge's face. But you could, you know, you could research that online, find out some stuff. Fairly easily.
Next question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my question is for Lyn. I assume you're going to fight this as long as you're physically able to. Can you tell me about the appeals process, and not just like if there needs to be more than one appeal? Like how does that go?
Yeah, we are going to appeal, and Ross's attorney said there are very strong case for appeal. Some of them have been addressed, and it typically happens about a year after sentencing. It's in front of 3 appellate judges. It doesn't judge the facts of the case as much as whether the law was properly administered. And we're hoping and praying that Ross will win an appeal. I also want to say something really quick about this murder thing. The film you saw at the very end, the clip at the very end, that was taken the day before DPR allegedly planned a hit. If you can imagine that person who wants to make a positive impact on humanity, the next day saying he wants to kill or whatever, what the exact dialogue, I am positive that Ross did not do these things, that he did not write these things. And everyone who knows him personally will say the same thing.
So I'm not a legal person, but if you believe the government committed a crime, can you sue the government for violating Fourth Amendment rights?
Well, and as Andy was saying, you know, there's a lot of people trying to find out what happened to how the servers were obtained, so or found. So I don't think anyone's sort of sitting this one out. I think that they want it to go away, but I don't think it will go away. People have a lot of different, you know, ideas about what happened, but I don't think we'll see that issue completely go away.
Well, maybe we should talk about that Fourth Amendment issue. You know, this is a big deal, and it comes up time and time again. And the question is, where did this evidence come from? And that's a pretty important question because this is the Fourth Amendment.
Right. I mean, just to be clear, like you're not allowed to search an American's computer without a warrant. And the prosecutors have essentially admitted that the FBI did not have a warrant. They somehow broke into the Silk Road server. They later said, well, it's okay, we did that without a warrant because it was in a foreign country. But because of Tor, they didn't know that it was in a foreign country. They eventually managed to kind of catch Ross in this catch-22, essentially, that they said, well, he's not even claiming that it's his server, so how could we have violated his privacy? And because he incriminated himself potentially by saying, yes, this is my server, he wasn't able to do that. So they sort of seem to have gotten away with murder here. They by all appearances, have all but admitted that they hacked into a server that had lots of Americans' data without a warrant, and nobody's basically allowed to ask any more questions about it. I mean, here we are asking questions, but I mean, in a legal sense, that question has been resolved, and Ross has been convicted without a hearing, without a public hearing about this really vital issue.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I don't remember it being addressed in the film, but did Ross make any money off of running So, the Silk Road?
Well, again, exactly what we know and don't know is really hard to ascertain. There was Bitcoin found on Ross's laptop. There's a lot of speculation, or there's been a lot of protestation about what is or isn't Ross's on the laptop. That's part of the problem with the way the case went, is it's very hard to determine what is or isn't the facts that we have in front of us. So, you know, there are claims that there were like $18 million worth of Bitcoin in a wallet on his laptop. You know, I was actually in court the day that that was raised, and that was part of the specialized knowledge argument. They weren't really allowed to talk about how Bitcoin wallets work and how they're moved around, and so there's a possibility that a Bitcoin wallet got planted on Ross's computer. There's a possibility that there wasn't. We just I honestly don't know. Nobody knows. To me, you know, having been in the courtroom, what was frustrating was just the inability to play out these questions. No one got to ask any questions. So we never really got to find out answers to things like that. The thing that was a little disturbing about being in the courtroom, knowing as much about Bitcoin as I do, which is more than most people, and it's insanely complicated, is that there was just no attempt at explaining the complexities of encryption technology or Bitcoin technology to the jury. Jury didn't have any idea what was going on. I mean, they just were, they were stone-faced with complete and utter confusion. And so you would just sit there and you know, and to be fair, I mean, the prosecution did a good job. That's their job, right? Their job is to come out and say, you know, bam, 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 and to make a case and to play the game their way. But you expect the defense to be able to come back and do the same thing. That didn't happen. And so what was sort of laid out was this idea that, well, Bitcoin's actually very simple. And what we have is this Bitcoin ledger, and it's just like a bank statement. And it's as simple as that. Next. And I just sat there thinking, well, it's really not. It's really anything but that simple.
And another thing is they blocked the defense's Bitcoin witness, who could have come and explained that. And another thing is, prosecutors actually have a standard of ethics where they're not supposed to do that, that their job is to find the truth, not to get a conviction.
Well, you're a prosecutor, is that true?
That is in their code of ethics, supposedly.
Yes, but there's all kinds of incentives to bring it.
Well, I'm not saying that's what they do. I'm just saying that's not their job description.
Right.
Supposedly.
I can't remember what side we're on. Yes, sir.
Hey, so first of all, thanks a lot for making this movie. I look forward to finding out more about the specifics. But as someone who came here for the tech conference and who's done the entrepreneur learn to code kind of thing, I see a disparity between the character you portrayed and then of Ross and his kind of just small technical background. Along with these other leaders of the deep web movement who are clearly have been coding every day since they were 5 years old. So I'm not sure if this is for Alex or Andy or Lyn, but could you give a little light or point me to where I could already find out about his background? Could he have actually done this stuff alone? Is that an important part of the question? Whether there was a more technical senior admin who facilitated this kind of stuff?
Well, there's a lot of, I mean, if you dig into this story, there's a lot of people. I think one of the main things, this is something we went through in the Napster story, one of the main things that happen in tech stories that gets confused is that, we like narratives around one person. We like the idea that we can go, this guy X did this thing, whether it's Zuckerberg or Fanning or Ross. And as you know, if you're in tech doesn't work that way. Tech is a hive-oriented enterprise, and it requires sort of the mentality and the interaction of a group. It's very rare that any large-scale technical enterprise is run or even created by a single individual. Napster was created by about 11 or 12 individuals. It was like a band. Each person took credit. Yeah, I'm Napster, but it really wasn't one person. And one of the first anomalies I found when I started researching the Silk Road was that there were a lot of people running the Silk Road. There were a lot of people who were involved in building the Silk Road. And it's sort of like, saying that Jeff Bezos sits at home in a hoodie and runs Amazon on his laptop. It's not possible. So that was just one of the first things that I encountered, but it's very hard to find much information unless you dig into the actual people who were involved.
Can I ask a quick follow-up?
Yeah, I'm getting the kind of motion here, so
Okay.
quick follow-up, and we'll do a couple more.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're doing a panel tomorrow night, so you can
All right,
come see that.
Let's do 2 more. Yeah.
Okay, so I remember in the documentary it mentioning that there were at least 2 and at one point 3 other Dread Pirate Roberts, and of course tons of tech hive type people who created this site. And with Ross's libertarian viewpoint and peaceful, at least it sounded, philosophy, the strong likelihood that he did not put out the hit and then it was one of the other people in the site. Did Ross communicate with these founders all over the anonymity of Tor, or like did he ever meet with them in person where he might actually know who?
Yeah, these people didn't know who each other were. I mean, there's allegations that the core administrator had identities of like the main moderators, but again, a lot of this is hard to get verification for because you're dealing with an entire infrastructure that was based on anonymity within a hidden service using encryption and an anonymous currency. So it wasn't like Fred's calling Joe and saying, hey, we're going to do blah, blah, blah. You know, it didn't work that way.
Last question.
So speaking to what Lyn said about the role of the prosecution, I was just wondering, and I'm not sure if you can do that, you know, within the U.S. legal system, did you attempt to get the prosecutor on the movie or get some kind of a response to the various handling of the evidence?
Yeah, no, I mean, they all say no. The first people I went after was Schumer, Preet Bharara, Turner. I mean, that was the very first group of people I went after when we started making the movie. And we spent a year and a half relentlessly trying to get them on camera, and they all said no. You know, FBI, you know, I had Chris Tarbell's number, I was calling his office, you know. They all said no.
That's part of the problem. I mean, if this is an example, right, which clearly it is, what do we have here? Why don't we know their side of the story? So, anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to all of you.